Greetings, nutrition students, and welcome to our study session for exam number 2. So let's go ahead and run through our chapters that will be included on exam number 2. Chapter number 7. So obesity in America is primarily caused by two things: Americans eating more, consuming more calories than we should, and exercising less. The health risk associated with obesity, or these particular risks could lead to obesity. So obesity leads to these particular health risks, Number 1, gallbladder disease, sleep apnea, which is when you stop breathing during your sleep, arthritis, and diabetes, to name a few. Fat nutrients. When consumed in excess of energy needs or our caloric need. So in other words, if we need 2,000 calories a day to maintain a healthy weight, we are eating beyond that. That's what we mean when we say consumed in excess of energy needs. The fat nutrient is used to produce body adipose tissue. So remember we said adipose tissue is kind of, think of it as the rolls or our kind of fat that insulates us, and which is a good thing. However, when we have too much of it, it's not a positive thing. Satiety. So what does the word satiety mean? So the definition of satiety is feeling full and satisfied after eating a large meal. Feeling full and satisfied after eating a large meal. Energy stores in the body as what two types of elements? So energy stores in the body as what two elements? Glycogen and triglycerides. Right? Glycogen, remember, is going to be from your carbohydrates. Really, it's going to break down into glycogen, and then for your fats, it's going to store as triglycerides. ATP. So ATP is this process, and what happens is that as foods are digested, the energy stored in the chemical bonds of the carbs, the proteins, the lipids or fats are converted to ATP. So think of it as we eat the gasoline, right, or the fuel. All of the macronutrients that we're eating are like fuel for our body. And what our body does is it takes that fuel and it makes our engine go. So it takes the fuel and it converts it to ATP, which is really energy. It's the energy that our body will use. Waist circumference and visceral fat. So really, when we have a large waist circumference, meaning we have a high amount of visceral fat, it's associated with a higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, and breast cancer. So I mentioned to you before that we say it's better to be shaped like a pear than an apple, because an apple is what we're talking about. When you have an apple, you have the most width or the largest amount of fat, if you will, around the middle area. And so that's what we're saying, is having a large waist circumference then means that we have a lot of visceral fat, which is like fat that's really not being used, it's excess fat, and that is going to lead to these different conditions that we just mentioned: heart disease, diabetes, and breast cancer. 3 components of energy expenditure, so using up energy: basal metabolism, physical activity, and diet-induced thermogenesis. So 3 components of energy expenditure. So remember, all the calories we eat convert to energy. How do we use that energy? We use it in 3 ways: basal metabolism, physical activity, and diet-induced thermogenesis. Right, our basal metabolism, really 60 to 75% of the calories or energy that we get from calories is spent on basal metabolism. So remember, the term basal metabolism really means it's what our body needs to make sure that we function at rest. So it is the breathing. It is our lungs going up and down, our heart pumping blood, it is our brain cells functioning. It is it's your kidneys working, your gallbladder working, all of those processes, even though we don't see them, they need a lot of energy to work. And so 60 to 75% of the calories or the energy we consume goes towards that. It goes towards the basal metabolism. Glucose and glycogen. Glycogen is broken down between meals. So we just said that the glycogen is those carbs that are stored when we don't need them right away. And when our body goes in between meals or goes without food, what happens is it takes the glycogen and it breaks it down to provide glucose to the body, because our body needs to function on glucose. The recommended rate of weight loss. So meaning, what do we recommend? How many pounds you should lose per week if you're looking to do some type of diet or exercise routine to lose some weight? And we're really saying 1/2 pound to 2 pounds per week. So 1/2 pound to 2 pounds per week. Research has shown that you're likely to keep that weight off. But when you drop 5-10 pounds in a week, then we see a lot of yo-yo type dieting going on. Gastric bypass. Gastric bypass is the surgical procedure that restricts the size of the stomach, and it bypasses part of the small intestine, and that allows someone to really, you're going to see them drop that weight. Again, it comes with a lifelong commitment to a certain style of eating. You have to be very careful with your body after you've had gastric bypass. However, it has really been able to enable people who are unable to kind of lose that weight to get that off, because we're bypassing part of where we absorb food. All right, jumping into chapter 8. Chapter 8, true statements about vitamins. So know these true statements. Number 1, deficiencies are rare in the US. Number 2, it's necessary for biochemical reactions in the body. We need those vitamins. Number 3, deficiency of fat-soluble vitamins do not provide energy. Deficiency of fat-soluble vitamins are less likely than of water-soluble vitamins. And number 4, vitamins do not provide energy. All right, so let's go through them again. True statements about vitamins. Deficiencies are rare in the US. Vitamins are necessary for those biochemical reactions. Deficiencies of fat-soluble vitamins are less likely than of water-soluble vitamins. And vitamins do not provide energy. So typically on the exam, there'll be something like, they'll give you a list of statements and they might say something like, what is not true? And so you have to know the ones that are true to know which one is the oddball out. Fortified foods. Fortifying foods is really the process of adding nutrients to foods. Right? The process of adding nutrients to food. So sometimes fortified with vitamin D, fortified with a particular vitamin or mineral. Enriched foods are different. So when vitamins are added back into the processed food at the same or higher level. So for instance, the food originally contained some vitamins in it, but when we processed the food, we stripped those vitamins away. Enriching the food means that we put the vitamin back into the food at least the same level it was originally at or higher, right? So vitamins are lost during that processing process, and then we enrich them back in. Vitamin absorption occurs in the small intestines. Right, the best source of vitamin C, right? Strawberries, oranges, orange juice, and kiwi, right? So you should be able to pick something out of a list that's not those things. Chapter 9, going on to fat-soluble vitamins. So fat-soluble vitamins require what 2 things for absorption into our cells? They require bile and dietary fat. Frozen foods. So know these points about frozen foods. Freezing causes nutrient losses. Number 2, produce frozen in the fields where it is grown. So often we don't transport first. We freeze it right where it's grown. Number 3, freezing slows the loss of nutrients caused by exposure to heat, light, and air. Retin A and Accutane. So retin A and Accutane are both products of vitamin A. They both contain vitamin A. And these two things can reduce skin wrinkles. They can treat acne and increase our epithelial or our outer cell turnover. So again, when we're sloughing off or getting rid of that outer layer of skin, it causes us to have kind of more of a healthy glow or healthier skin because we're getting rid of those dead skin cells. And retin A and Accutane are very good at skincare in general. The sunshine vitamin is which vitamin? Vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin. Vitamin D regulates what two things in the body? It regulates calcium and phosphorus. So it regulates calcium and phosphorus to provide balance in the body. What food contains the most vitamin D? Whole milk. Whole milk contains the most vitamin D. The primary function of vitamin E is to act as an antioxidant. We said before that antioxidants are good. They fight off free radicals. Free radicals are bad. Free radicals try to invade your healthy skin cells, or your, not just skin cells, but all of your cells, right? They can start off in the skin, but even internally, they want to attack them, which can cause your nice round cell to start looking funny shaped, which can be an opportunity for malignancy or cancer to invade, and we don't want that. So your antioxidants kind of like, think of them as the warriors that stand outside of the cell and guard and say, no, you cannot come here. I'm going to fight you if you do. That's what antioxidants do. How to increase our antioxidants, right? Eat more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. To increase antioxidants, eat more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Vitamin K and clotting. So vitamin K produces prothrombin, and prothrombin is what's needed for our blood to clot. And we said that's really important that our blood clot, that we don't just bleed to death because there's no clotting going on. So we need that vitamin K because vitamin K produces prothrombin. Prothrombin causes our blood to clot. Chapter 10, water in the human body. So what do you think? How much of our human body is made up of water? 60%, 60. 60% of our body is made up of water. Water in the urine. So the role of water in the urine is to function as a transport medium. The role of water in the urine is to function as a transport medium. So remember, it picks up bad stuff or germs or bacteria, things we don't want, it gets rid of it, right? We urinate it out, right? The roles of water in regulating body temperature. So number one, changes temperature slowly, so that helps to maintain body temperature. So we don't go through dramatic shifts. It helps to change body temperature slowly. Number two, body temperature increases. Number three, sweat produces, evaporates to cool the body down. So we sweat, and that helps to relieve our body of that heat, helps it to cool down. Number four, low body temperature restricts our blood flow to the skin to conserve body temp. So low body temperature restricts blood flow to the skin to conserve body temp. Most of the salt consumed by Americans is added during processing and manufacturing. Sodium intake, the upper level or the levels we're concerned about is going to be 2,300 milligrams a day. So we should not be going beyond 2,300 milligrams a day. So you'll be able to check that out in your diet study, how you're doing on that. High sodium diets are linked to hypertension. Remember, hypertension means high blood pressure. High blood pressure. So salt or sodium correlates with hypertension, high blood pressure. Hypertension or high blood pressure in the US affects 1/3 of adults. 33% or 1/3 of adults. Chapter 11, major versus trace minerals. So the difference between major and trace minerals are the amounts needed daily by the body. The amounts needed daily. Either we need more of it, which is the major minerals, or we need just a small, tiny amount, which is the trace minerals. The most abundant mineral in the body is calcium. calcium. Food group that provides the largest variety of minerals is going to be your meats and your beans. Meats and beans. Mineral supplements can be toxic. One can decrease the bioavailability of others, and they can help meet dietary needs. So 3 things. Mineral supplements can be toxic if we take too much. They can decrease the bioavailability of others. So remember we said if we get too much of one mineral, it can cause our body not to absorb a different mineral. And number 3, mineral supplements can help meet our dietary needs when we don't get it in our diet. Ideally, we want to get all of our vitamins and minerals through the diet. However, if we don't, a supplement is better than nothing. Calcium recommendations. So we're recommending for adults 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Remember, that's just for adults. If you're over 50, the requirement's a little different. Adults, 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams per day. Girls and calcium. Our girls ages 9 to 17 are the group most likely to not meet their calcium requirement. So girls ages 9 to 17 do not meet their calcium requirement. Lactose intolerance. So symptoms of lactose intolerance can be avoided by using a product treated with lactase, right? So can be avoided. Good sources of calcium include eggs, sardines, yogurt. Eggs, sardines, yogurt. Bone formation after age 35. After age 35, between 35 and 45, our bone starts to break down, and that breakdown process exceeds or overtakes the way that our bones form. So when we're under 35, what happens is all of those years, ages 1 through 35, our body is making like a bank, or they're storing up calcium. And then once we hit around 35, someone from 35 to 45, our body starts to withdraw or deplete the calcium we had in the reserve. And so that's why it's so important at these young ages, especially we just talked about girls ages 9 to 17 who aren't getting enough calcium. We need to make sure they are. Osteoporosis is significant loss of bone mass and increased risk of fractures associated with aging. So significant loss of bone mass. So remember, we said the bone changes. It goes from looking like a solid to looking like Swiss cheese because it gets holes and it becomes fragile. And so so the mass or the size will shrink, and we're at an increased possibility of getting breaks or fractures. Calcium and osteoporosis. So calcium is the most significant dietary factor contributing to osteoporosis, whether or not we have that calcium. Osteoporosis and smoking and drinking. Both smoking and drinking increase risk of osteoporosis. Phosphorus is essential for energy production. Remember that ATP, since it's part of that ATP process. So phosphorus helps to convert our calories, or what we eat, into energy to be used by our body. And chapter 12, hemoglobin. So hemoglobin binds and transports oxygen in the bloodstream, and iron is a component of hemoglobin. It's the protein. And so we need iron to make the hemoglobin, right? And that hemoglobin is crucial for our body to get all of the oxygen it needs in all the cells. The most common nutritional deficiency for all of us is iron. Selenium supplements. Taking the selenium supplements will slow the aging process down. Taking selenium supplements will slow the aging process down. Fluoride in the US comes from 2 sources: our drinking water, or basically our fluoridated drinking water, and toothpaste. Both of those things we have fortified with fluoride. Okay, all right, so there we have chapters 7 through chapter 12 in preparation for exam number 2.